For decades, Hollywood sold us a myth: flawless legends, loving husbands, devoted fathers. But behind the cameras, some of cinema's biggest icons hid secrets their studios paid fortunes to bury: manipulation, shocking scandals, lives quietly destroyed while the world kept applauding. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the Golden Age's darkest stars, stories far more disturbing than anyone ever imagined. Charlie Chaplin. To millions, Charlie Chaplin was the beloved little tramp, a silent film genius who made the world laugh without ever saying a word. The bowler hat, the tiny mustache, the twirling cane, together they became the very symbol of early Hollywood. Yet behind that famous smile lay a private life shadowed by scandal. As Chaplin's fame grew, so did the controversy trailing him. In 1918, at 29, he married 16-year-old Mildred Harris after believing she was pregnant. History repeated itself years later with Lita Grey, whom Chaplin had first met at just 12 years old during casting for The Kid. When she became pregnant at 16, the 35-year-old director quietly took her across the border to Mexico to marry her, reportedly to sidestep California law. Their marriage collapsed into one of Hollywood's most sensational scandals. During the 1927 divorce, Grey accused Chaplin of cruelty, pressuring her toward an abortion, threatening her with a firearm, and subjecting her to humiliation in private. The settlement reached nearly $1 million, a staggering sum for the era. Despite the headlines his career endured, audiences kept the artist separate from the man. Chaplin later wed actress Paulette Goddard, then at 54 married 18-year-old Una O'Neill, a union her father, Nobel laureate Eugene O'Neill, never accepted, cutting ties with his daughter for good. Chaplin died in Switzerland in 1977, celebrated as a founding genius of cinema. But decades later, court records and memoirs revealed a far more complicated man, one whose greatest performance may have happened off-screen. Sean Connery. For generations of film fans, Sean Connery embodied confidence, elegance, and masculine cool. As the first actor to play James Bond, he could walk into a room, flash that smile, and make the impossible look effortless. The ultimate gentleman, admired by men and desired by women alike. But behind the tuxedo and the famous one-liners, his first wife described a marriage that looked nothing like the on-screen fantasy. Connery married Australian actress Diane Cilento in 1962, the very year he became Bond. As his fame exploded worldwide, she later said her own life was quietly unraveling. In her 2006 memoir, My 9 Lives, Cilento alleged that Connery was both physically and emotionally abusive during much of their 11-year marriage. She claimed he resented her success after her own Academy Award nomination, controlled their finances, turned down acting offers on her behalf without consulting her, and expected her to abandon her career for his. While filming The Hill in Spain, she alleged he struck her repeatedly during an argument, leaving her to spend the night locked in the bathroom. Adding to the controversy were Connery's own remarks. Over 2 decades of interviews, he suggested that striking a woman could sometimes be justified, comments that trailed him for the rest of his career. Connery spent his final years celebrated worldwide, showered with honors until his death in 2020 at age 90. His Bond remains legendary, but for many, Cilento's allegations and his own words revealed a far more troubling legacy, proof that not every villain stays confined to the script. Bing Crosby. To the American public, Bing Crosby wasn't just a movie star, he was the perfect father. His warm voice, easy smile, and timeless songs like White Christmas made him feel like the kind of man every family wished they had at the dinner table. For decades, Hollywood carefully guarded that wholesome image. But inside his own home, his children later described a father they barely recognized. Behind closed doors, Crosby ruled with fear rather than affection. According to his eldest son, Gary, physical punishment was an almost daily reality. In his 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, Gary claimed his father beat him with a belt fitted with metal tips, weighed him weekly, and punished him whenever he fell short of strict expectations. He described a home where love felt conditional, and no one knew what mood Bing might be in. His brothers, Dennis and Lindsay, later confirmed the discipline was harsh, though they remembered its severity differently. The pain didn't end once the cameras stopped rolling. Both Dennis and Lindsay Crosby later died by suicide years apart, leaving many to wonder how deeply their childhood had shaped them. Bing's public image stayed largely untouched during his lifetime, protected by Hollywood's publicity machine. Only after his death did these stories reach a wider audience. Crosby died in 1977 after a round of golf in Spain, reportedly calling it one of the happiest days of his life. His legacy remains divided to millions. He's still the voice of Christmas. To those who lived under his roof, the sound they remembered most was fear. John Wayne. For decades, John Wayne wasn't just Hollywood's biggest cowboy. He was America itself, strong, fearless, honorable. He became the face of countless westerns and war films, convincing millions that courage and integrity rode hand in hand. Presidents praised him, audiences worshipped him, and his image as the ultimate American hero seemed untouchable. But behind the revolvers and standing ovations was a marriage marked by very different accusations. Wayne's second wife, Mexican actress Esperanza Chata Bauer, claimed life with the legend was anything but peaceful. During their bitter divorce in the early 1950s, she accused him of repeatedly assaulting her, dragging her from bed, giving her a black eye, and humiliating her with degrading language in front of guests. Wayne denied everything, insisting his wife struggled with alcoholism and infidelity. The case ended quietly with a financial settlement, and Hollywood's publicity machine soon pushed the story out of the headlines. Still, the accusations never fully disappeared. After years of research, biographer Richard D. Jensen concluded that domestic violence appeared to be a recurring pattern across all three of Wayne's marriages. He also described Wayne as a heavy drinker with an explosive temper, a sharp contrast to the calm, dependable heroes he played on screen. Even so, his larger-than-life reputation remained nearly untouchable, and fans kept celebrating the cowboy while the women in his life faded from view. John Wayne died in 1979, remembered as one of American cinema's greatest stars. His films still define an era. But historians who later examined the record found that his toughest battles were never fought on horseback. They happened behind closed doors, far from any camera. Spencer Tracy. The moment Spencer Tracy stepped onto the Academy Awards stage for his second consecutive Oscar, Hollywood hailed him as one of the greatest actors alive. Directors fought to work with him, critics praised every role, and audiences admired the quiet strength he brought to the screen. But once the applause faded, the calm, dependable man on screen was fighting demons that those closest to him knew all too well. Behind the glamorous headlines was a marriage burdened by years of alcoholism. Tracy married actress Louise Treadwell in 1923, and although he later began his famous relationship with Katharine Hepburn, he never divorced his wife. Friends often described two different men. Sober Tracy was thoughtful, disciplined, and generous. During long drinking binges, he reportedly became unpredictable and at times physically threatening. Louise quietly endured these years without publicly revealing what life behind closed doors was really like. Many biographers believe Tracy never fully recovered from the guilt he felt after their son John was born deaf, a burden that haunted him, and fed an addiction that slowly consumed his health and his family. Rather than leaving, Louise stayed, and together they helped establish the John Tracy Clinic in 1942, offering hope to thousands of deaf children, one of the few bright chapters in an otherwise troubled marriage. Spencer Tracy died in 1967, just 17 days after finishing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, a performance still regarded as one of his finest. Tributes celebrated his talent while the struggles inside his home went largely unmentioned. Sometimes Hollywood's greatest illusion isn't built with special effects. It's the image of a perfect man kept alive by those who knew the truth and chose to stay silent. Errol Flynn. The instant Errol Flynn drew his sword in The Adventures of Robin Hood or sailed into battle in Captain Blood, audiences saw the perfect swashbuckling hero. Handsome, fearless, and effortlessly charming, he became one of Warner Brothers' biggest stars almost overnight. Women adored him, men wanted to be him, and Hollywood treated him like royalty. But away from the cameras, Flynn's life was chaos. His first marriage to French actress Lili Damita became notorious. Friends nicknamed them the Battling Flynns for arguments that often turned violent on both sides. During one infamous incident on their first wedding anniversary, Damita reportedly smashed a champagne bottle over his head, and he struck her back hard enough to break a tooth, sending them both to the hospital. Warner Brothers quickly told reporters the injuries came from a minor car accident. Greater controversy followed in 1942 when Flynn was charged in a highly publicized case involving two underage girls. After a month-long trial, he was acquitted on every count and somehow became even more famous. Behind the scenes, heavy drinking, drug use, and reckless living steadily wore down his health. By the time Flynn died in Vancouver in 1959, he was only 50, though doctors reportedly said his liver resembled that of a much older man. Even in his final years, he remained involved with much younger women, adding another chapter to an already controversial life. Hollywood never stopped celebrating the fearless adventurer on screen. But the man behind that legendary smile left behind a legacy just as shocking as the films that made him famous. James Caan. The explosive beating of Carlo in The Godfather remains one of the most unforgettable scenes in movie history. As Sonny Corleone, James Caan looked terrifyingly convincing as a man who solved every problem with his fists. Critics praised the performance as brilliant acting, but years later, many wondered where the performance ended and the real man began. Correction. The original script described a 1994 domestic violence arrest involving an ex-girlfriend. Public records instead show Caan was arrested in March 1994 for brandishing a gun during a dispute in North Hollywood, one of several legal run-ins that year that never went to trial. In 1994, James Caan was arrested after brandishing a gun during a dispute in North Hollywood, one of several legal controversies that surfaced that year, none of which went to trial. Several former partners and associates later described a man whose charm could vanish, suddenly replaced by an explosive temper that made life around him unpredictable. Friends admired his loyalty and humor, but those closest to him sometimes saw a very different side of the star. Despite the controversy, Caan remained one of the industry's most respected actors. Films like Misery Thief and Brian's Song reminded audiences why he was considered one of his generation's finest performers. In later interviews, Caan admitted he had hurt people he loved and made serious mistakes, an unusually candid admission from an actor whose tough guy image often overshadowed his private struggles. When Caan died in 2022 at 82, tributes celebrated his unforgettable career. Few dwelled on the allegations that trailed him for decades, another legend receiving a standing ovation, while the harder chapters faded quietly into the background. Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor's legendary performance in Live in Concert changed stand-up comedy forever. Millions watched him turn painful memories into laughter, speaking openly about race, poverty, addiction, and his own failures in a way no comedian had dared before. To audiences, he seemed brutally honest about everything, but one chapter of his life was far more painful than the jokes he told on stage. Pam Grier, one of Hollywood's biggest stars of the 1970s, later revealed that her relationship with Pryor included frightening moments of physical abuse before she finally left. Other former wives and partners shared similar accounts over the years, describing a man who could be warm, generous, and hilarious one moment, then suddenly threatening when anger and heavy drug use took over. Pryor himself admitted that cocaine addiction made his violent outbursts worse, trapping him in a cycle he struggled to break. In his 1995 autobiography, Pryor Convictions, he confronted his past with unusual honesty. Rather than denying his behavior, he acknowledged hurting people he loved and accepted responsibility for much of it. Friends believe the trauma of growing up in a brothel surrounded by violence and instability shaped the anger he carried into adulthood. Even Pryor admitted that history could explain part of the story but never excuse the harm done. He spent his final years battling multiple sclerosis after decades of addiction and health struggles and died in 2005, remembered as one of the greatest comedians in history. His influence on comedy remains unmatched, yet his extraordinary talent exists alongside a deeply troubled personal life that still complicates the image of the fearless truth-teller audiences loved. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.